Hi, my name is Hesu, and today we're going to be talking about high-functioning depression. So for those of you that are really familiar with mental health and some of the disorders that we can find in the DSM, you might know this as dysthymia. So we're going to talk a little bit more about signs that you could be looking for, whether you might be experiencing high-functioning depression or somebody that you know and care about is going through this challenge and struggle. So first, let's think about depression in general. When you think of somebody that's depressed, what comes to mind? For me, I'm thinking of somebody that has a hard time getting out of bed, has a hard time leaving their home. Maybe they've lost interest in things they used to really enjoy, like hobbies or certain types of food, restaurants, things that they liked to do with their free time. Maybe they're not really so good at maintaining relationships with their family, their friends. Maybe they've lost their job because they've lost motivation and this will and this drive to live their life. So on the flip side, let's think about people in your life that are very high functioning. You might have a coworker, for instance, or have had a coworker that seems to somehow manage to get up early every day before work to exercise, maintains a healthy diet, has good relationships as far as we know with family, friends, coworkers. In general, just seems to keep all their stuff together. Or maybe somebody else that you've known in the past. Great work ethic, really an assertive communicator, just seems generally like he knows what's going on with life, has everything figured out. So now that we have these images in mind of someone with depression and someone that seemingly doesn't, I want to shift gears a little bit to talk to you about a functioning alcoholic. We've all heard this term, so what does it mean? When we say somebody's a functioning alcoholic, we're generally referring to someone that probably does have some kind of problem with alcohol, but they're able to maintain their job, they're able to maintain relationships, family. But the problem, I guess, is that sometimes they're not able to maintain those things in healthy ways. And it's very difficult sometimes to identify a functioning alcoholic because they are able to keep some aspects of their life together. So jumping back to the original topic here of someone with high functioning depression, otherwise known as dysthymia, it's really hard to identify these people sometimes, and sometimes it's us. Sometimes we can't even identify when it's us that we're suffering from these things. So today, again, we want to talk about things that you can be looking for, or things that you might have noticed in yourself that could be a sign that you're experiencing high-functioning depression. So, people with high-functioning depression or experiencing dysthymia are often difficult to identify. We're not seeing these overt traits of a very depressed person. No catatonic states. In fact, people with high-functioning depression are often able to maintain really healthy lifestyles, good relationships with other people, and that inadvertently almost makes the risk a little bit scarier in a different kind of way. Why? Someone with overt symptoms of anything, we can find them. We can get them into some kind of services or try to help them as best as we can. For people flying under the radar, for people experiencing symptoms that we don't see, it's really difficult to identify them and then get them help. It's really difficult to communicate to them that maybe they should consider finding help for themselves. So, when we think about mental health services in general, there already is a pretty big stigma around this. A lot of people out there, adults in the United States, for instance, have a hard time seeking out treatment because of, the idea that if you seek out therapy, you're crazy, or you can't handle things on your own, or something about you is weak because you can't seem to get out of this funk by yourself. However, the idea right now is to start thinking about seeking out mental health services as something that's normal, as something that can help you. With a lot of individuals suffering from high-functioning depression, we see people that are driven, motivated, successful in their careers, successful in their relationships with people. So this stigmatization around mental health services might be even greater for them because they don't want to clue people in their lives in to the fact that they might be struggling with something or that they might need help with something. And so for people experiencing this, we have a hard time finding them. And they have a hard time finding help because, maybe some part of them doesn't really want to be identified, where this other part does, but we don't know how to find them. So what are we looking for in order to identify whether we ourselves are having a hard time with this or somebody that we care about might be going through a hard time with this? There are some things that you can be looking for or tuning into in yourself to determine whether you might be having some kind of challenge with high-functioning depression. So one of the first things to look for is this general sense of sadness. Going back to this image you may have of this depressed person, you could be thinking of someone crying all day, just having a hard time with life, slumped over, catatonic even, maybe not moving very much. You're not going to really see this with someone with high-functioning depression, but rather, like I said, a subtle and general sense of sadness most of the time, almost every day, if not every day. And it's a little bit inexplicable. Sometimes you can't really tell where this feeling is coming from or pinpoint any particular trigger that hurt your feelings or anything like that. Some other things to be looking for and thinking about is the inability or the loss of ability to experience joy, loss of interest in things that you used to really find to be something that make you feel good or bring some kind of satisfaction to your life. You might also notice diminished energy. So like I said, not necessarily not being able to get out of bed, but just diminished. You feel fatigued a lot of the time where maybe before you didn't experience it that way. Other things to be looking for is being really self-critical, which leads to perfectionism, which can also contribute to blowing things out of proportion, finding really small things in your life to turn into huge problems. So I think there's a saying, making a mountain out of a molehill. A lot of people struggling with high-functioning depression experience these things. Like I said, really self-critical, feeling a lot of guilt and shame, about the past and even the future, things that haven't even happened yet. This is something that a lot of people could be struggling with. You might also be thinking about this depressed person who seems sad all the time, but there's other feelings involved in depression too. You might notice yourself kind of with a short fuse. So another way to put this is irritability. Feeling annoyed by things pretty easily and quickly. This is another symptom or sign of a lot of things that could be going on, but irritability is definitely part of it. If you find that things that normally wouldn't bug you are starting to bug you a lot, this is something to tune into. You might also find yourself turning to coping skills that might not actually be that helpful. So another way to think about this stuff is a maladaptive coping skill. So something that you've used for a lot of your life to help you feel better, or at least help you not think about these things that are making you feel bad, but these things may not be addressing the underlying issue. So things like substance abuse or reckless behavior, losing yourself in hours of television. These kinds of things can help us escape the problem for a temporary time, but it's not really addressing the underlying thing. Dysthymia is both a biological and an emotional issue that really needs to be treated and looked at. If we're not looking at these symptoms to treat, then like I said, the risk is pretty great because the symptoms can worsen into something else, and then you might find yourself meeting criteria for a more severe disorder. Another thing, ironically, is self-doubt. So we mentioned that people that are experiencing this are really driven people a lot of the times, which makes it so hard to identify them out there in the wild. However, there's a lot of self-doubt, which comes with this other piece that I talked about previously of being really self-critical. So just being uncertain, unsure of who you are can really contribute to this too. So having a loose sense of self-awareness, those kinds of things can contribute to this also. And finally, if you find yourself having a really hard time relaxing, just unwinding after a full day of work. Let's say you get home, you're really tired, and the last thing you can do is sit down and take some time to, have a breather. Instead, you're up and going and trying to clean everything and organize and make sure everything is okay. This could also be a sign that something is going on if you find that you are unable to relax. If you like this video, please feel free to subscribe to our YouTube channel where you'll find a lot more content on a variety of mental health topics. And if you're interested in learning more about online counseling, please click the link to BetterHelp.com below.